Hello and welcome to another episode of the ZTV Sports Report, your home for all things Akron Zips athletics. I'm your host Megan Williams.
And I'm Zach Leininger.
And today we will be continuing our coverage of both basketball teams while previewing our spring sports. So don't go anywhere, because the ZTV Sports Report starts now. Welcome back. We are now going to go into our player spotlight, who is Ali Ali. So please appreciate these highlights edited together by Taz.
Ali allows you to match up in different ways defensively because he moves his feet like a small guard, yet he's 6'8" and has all this size and length. I thought he was just as good on the defensive end as he was the offensive end, quite frankly.
Wants the ball, not afraid to have the ball, wants to make plays. So he's a big part of what we do. I think he's one of the best players in the country alongside Reek and one of the best players in our league. So such a tough coverage as he's basically a 6'8" perimeter player. So he can really hit you inside and outside and just score a lot of different ways.
And Ali's a very, very good player. Two-way player, plays both ends of the floor. One of the most intelligent players I've ever coached. He's very smart, very skilled, has good size, obviously. He's athletic.
Versatility. You're talking about a guy that can guard multiple positions, play multiple positions, and then offensively and defensively, he's just so intelligent out there. He sees things before they happen, and then you can put him on a play in the middle of the game. You can tell him, go play the 3, go play the 4, go over, and he just does it. He's really smart, one of the smartest basketball players I've ever coached.
Thank you, Taz. Well, Ali Ali is just an extremely talented player on this team. He can score from anywhere on the court, whether it's in the paint or behind the arc. He has a season high of 29 points, which came in the Gardner-Webb game. He also has a season high of 7 rebounds, which is just very helpful to the team because that means he's good offensively and defensively. So what have you seen in him so far this season?
Yeah, Ali he's really come on strong for this team, and he's provided an offensive spark that this team has needed. His 15 points a game trails only Enrique on this team. He's shooting 47% from the field, 31% from 3, and he has 5 games over 20. So he's been pretty efficient for this team. He's been he's been a really good scorer for this team, and he's really helped alleviate the pressure that Enrique has on his shoulders to carry this team. Because as we know, as the games go on, Enrique starts to get double, triple teamed. So, he has to get the ball out to somebody. And Ali is always willing to get the ball. He's always willing to score. He's always willing to make a play. And he just makes, such a big difference for this team.
Yeah, he didn't even start the season playing because of some eligibility issues. But ever since the Northern Kentucky game where he became a starter for this team, he hasn't left the starting lineup. And we can see why. These stats just are amazing. And John Gross has said multiple times that he's just an extremely intelligent player in terms of basketball IQ. And I think you can tell just by the stats that he's a smart player. He is just so fun to watch, and I think he'll continue to be fun to watch throughout the rest of the season. So with that, we are going to go into talking about the rest of the men's basketball team. So let's take it over to Zach and Wesley, who covered 2 of their most recent games.
What's going on, everybody? Zach Leininger here, and today I'll be breaking down the Zips men's basketball team's recent matchup against Central Michigan. This game featured the top 2 teams in the MAC going head-to-head with positioning for the MAC tournament underway. The Zips entered the contest without Sammy Hunter, forcing the team to readjust. Despite the loss, Akron came out of the gates hot as they opened the game with a 13-0 run. The Zips continued to ride the hot hand through the first half, building up a 35-20 lead heading into the break. Central Michigan tried their best to make the game competitive in the second half, however, it was to no avail. Akron kept their foot on the gas and maintained their dominant performance, winning the game 68-47. Enrique Freeman led the charge for the Zips, logging 17 points to go along with 15 rebounds. Another solid contributor to the win was Greg Tribble, who added 17 points of his own and secured 7 boards in the process. Rounding out the team was Tavari Johnson, who tacked on 10 points off the bench. For the Chippewas, the majority of the production came from the bench, with Aiden Rubio and Jamal Davis scoring 12 and 11 respectively. With this win, Akron maintains the top seed in the conference. Coming up, the Zips travel to James Madison University to compete in the Mid-American Sunbelt Conference Challenge in what should be an exciting matchup. This has been Zach Leininger with the ZTV Sports Report, and as always, go Zips!
Hey everyone, this is Wes again with your ZTV Sports Update. Today I will be going over the men's basketball game with Toledo. And I gotta say, man, I'm pretty hyped because the Zips emerged with a win with a score of 77-70. So it appears that the top scorer for the team is Ali, who scored 26 points. And he has also made the most field goals, which is pretty impressive. He had a ratio of 8-13. Followed by Ali is no other than the man himself, Enrique Freeman, who scored 20 points, 14 rebounds. And that is just absolutely insane because every other player only got 2 or 3. Another notable player is Michael Dawson. This player actually scored the most 3-pointers out of any other player during the game, making a whopping 4 out of 11 of his 3-point throw ratio and scoring 14 points. It looks like Dawson might be climbing to the top. The top scorer for Toledo was Raheem Moss, who scored 16 points. He also made the most free throws, having a ratio of 7-17. Another player I believe is worth mentioning is Tyler Cochran, who had 9 rebounds, which is more than every other player on the Rockets. Other top scorers include Javon Simmons and Dante Maddox Jr., who both scored 14 points. That's all I have for your sports update today. This is Wes, and go Zips.
Thank you, Zach and Wesley. Well, Zach, this Akron team did something a little bit shocking. They lost the game coming into this Toledo game. They lost that away Miami of Ohio game, but then the very next game was also an away game against Eastern Michigan. We absolutely showed out that game, beating them by like at least 30 points. So clearly that loss kind of motivated them. But this Toledo game, we knew it was going to be intense. They came into this game being second only to us. This Toledo team is an absolute powerhouse with 5 people who scored in more than 10 points. So what did you see in this game?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Toledo is they're a very well-coached, well-rounded basketball team. Losing Ray J. Dennis from last year to this year has forced the team to find other players to score the ball. And because of that, it's really spread out their team, and it's forced more players to step up, and it's made them a dominant force. Obviously, not as dominant as the Zips, but still always presents a challenge. Speaking to the Zips, really strong performances in this game. Ali really set the tone, got the team going. 26 points this game.
For sure.
8 for 13 from the field, got to the line 11 times, hit 9 free throws. That really set this team up for a lot of success because I don't think that Toledo was ready for that.
Yeah,
I don't think they were ready for that aggression from Ali, and it really seemed to show because they seemed to have been sleeping a little bit on Enrique. Enrique steps up, he hits 20 points, grabs 14 rebounds, another double-double for him. Michael Dawson came in, hit 4 threes, scored 14 points. So they really had the performance that they needed and the performance that we expected.
Yeah, as we said, this Toledo team was amazing. So I think this win just really gave us a lot of momentum going into the next games, which the very next game, 4 days later, was against Central Michigan, also at home. This Central Michigan team was in second, only to us, once again, coming into this game. They only scored 47 points the entire game, and if you only score 47 points versus the Zips team, you're not going to win. I'm going to be honest, you're not going to win. You can't win with that. But how do you think our team did this game?
The Zips have been on a roll. They've been on an absolute run they've been on an absolute run recently. They've been far and away the most consistent team in the MAC. They've held this one spot for a number of weeks here. And the other teams are just competing to try to be as good as the Zips.
Yeah.
This Central Michigan game showed a lot of the same things we saw in the Toledo game. They carried that momentum over to this game. They forced Toledo to 16% from three. They forced Central to 16% from three. To make it even harder on them, they forced them to 30% overall from the field.
Yeah.
So they were absolutely just locking them down across the board. Only committed 5 turnovers, so a very efficient game from the team. Enrique Freeman, 17 points again, 15 rebounds yet again. Another dominant performance from this double-double machine. Greg Tribble, 17 points as well, 7 rebounds. Tribble's performance really, I think, is what stands out to me because he's not known to be that big of a scorer. So when he's out here, scoring 17, 2 for 3 from 3, 6 to 11 from the field, when he's doing that, it makes it even harder on the rest of the team because you're already worried about Dawson, Ali, Enrique, Caleb Thornton when he comes off the bench, guys like that. You're worried about some of those pure scorers, and you're not thinking about Tribble. So the Zips are just they're in a phenomenal spot right now.
Yeah. And speaking of bench players, Tavari in this game came off and got 10 points for us. Like, that just shows how good our bench players are. And especially speaking of Greg, he has just made leaps and bounds of better performances this season. He's been working so hard, and you can tell every time he hits the court. He's been hitting way more threes than he ever has. And that just really comes down to how hard he's been working, and good for him, you know what I mean? Like, it's amazing to see hard work pay off. But so with that, we are going to go into our first commercial break. But after that, we are going to be talking about the women's basketball team. So stay tuned.
You're watching ZTV.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual, and she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, "Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you, and we'll figure it out."
Welcome back. Now we are going to continue our coverage of the women's basketball team. So let's take it over to Matt and Katie, who covered 2 of their recent
What is up,
games.
everyone? It's Katie Bomber here with the ZTV Sports Report, and today we will be covering everything Zips women's basketball and their recent matchup against the Miami Redhawks. Akron women's basketball team got a 13-point and 12-rebound performance from junior Reagan Bass, but were unable to secure a victory as Miami recorded a 58-48 decision past the Zips on February 3rd at James A. Rhodes Arena. The Zips had a 3-player score in double digits, led by Bass, who notched her league-leading 12th double-double of the season. Freshmen Tanisha Clark and Kaya Woods each helped out with 10 points. Miami opened the contest on an 8-2 run, highlighted by triples from Lard and Treader. Akron cut the deficit to 8-6 before Treader scored back-to-back baskets as Miami led 12-8 midway through the first quarter. After falling behind 14-9, Akron went on a 5-0 run with 3:26 left in the first quarter, accumulating a 3 from Woods to tie the game at 14. Miami then pulled ahead, sending the Zips into the second quarter down 18-14. The Redhawks kept adding to the lead, building a 24-14 advantage before Akron went on a 5-0 run, highlighted by a 3 from Bass to cut the deficit to 24-19. the Zips weren't able to narrow the gap any further and entered halftime with a 30-25 deficit. The Red Hawks maintained their 5-point advantage 4 minutes into the quarter, 37-32, but 5 straight points from Lou Brown matched Miami's largest lead to that point as Red Hawks led 42-32. Midway through the third, Miami then outscored the Zips in the third period by 8 and led 49-36. Akron played well near the basket, scoring 8 of its 11 points in the paint. The Zips narrowed their deficit in the fourth quarter but could not get over the hump, losing 58-48. Akron took advantage of its opportunities in the post, scoring 8 of its 12 points in the paint. This has been Katie Balmer with the ZTV Sports Report. Go Zips!
What's good, everyone? Matt here, and I'll be talking about the women's basketball game against the Toledo Rockets, which took place at James A. Rhodes Arena on January 31st. Let's take a look, shall we? The game started off with junior Zakiya Rashid with an assistance by Tanisha Clark scoring a 3-pointer, giving the Zips a head start. Later on, the Zips would fall behind as Kaya Woods would attempt to score a point, only to be intercepted by Sophia Wired of the Toledo Rockets. However, Woods redeemed herself via a good jumper, gaining the Zips 2 points, but they still fell behind by 8 points. Woods later scored a 3-pointer, which tallied the score 14-6. The Zips were not going to back down despite the fact that the Rockets were a ways ahead. While Reagan Bass missed a layup, Lisa Toponen was of great assistance, scoring the Zips 2 points. Kicking off the second quarter, Reagan Bass elegantly performed a good jumper, resulting in a tallying score of 14 for the Zips. Later on, Kaya Woods managed to steal the ball from the opposing team, resulting in a good layup. Reagan Bass shot another layup after the ball rebounded. Concluding the second quarter, Morgan Haney managed a good layup right on the buzzer. The Zips came back at the start of the third quarter, courtesy of the 3-pointer shot by Zakiya Rashid. Rashid was not done yet as she managed to score another 3-pointer after a little mishap moments ago. Sophomore Linnea Riley made a good layup, tallying the Zips score to 33 with the assistance of Morgan Haney. Tanisha Clark started the fourth quarter off strong with a good layup, getting the Zips to 48 points, hopefully pushing 50. With 7 minutes left on the clock, Reagan Bass performed another good layup with the assistance of Zakiya Rashid. The layups have been working this past quarter as Tanisha Clark gained another 2 points for the Zips, making the score 69-52. Unfortunately, the Zips lost with a final box score of 88-66. Hopefully, they'll redeem themselves on their next game. This is Matt with your ZTV Sports Report, and as always, go Zips.
Thank you, Katie and Matt. So, Zach, before this Toledo game for the women's team, they're coming off an amazing NIU road win, and road wins are always hard. But coming into this Toledo game, this team was one of the top 3 teams in the conference, and that's just not going to be easy. That's never going to be easy, but especially since we have a first-year head coach against a coach that's been coaching for a long time. It's never going to work out the way you want it to. Coming into halftime in this Toledo game, our ladies were down by 20, and that's just really hard to come back from. We ended up losing this game overall by 22 points. So what did you see in them this game?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, the women's team loses this game by 22. Looking into it, I guess quarter by quarter, you mentioned halftime was 42 to 25 here, so yeah, just about 20 points. Looking in the third, Akron was able to match Toledo's 21 points. Then in the fourth, Toledo only has a 25-20 advantage. So with that in mind, it seems to me that if this team was able to get off to a hotter start and been able to have been in the game sooner, we would have seen a different result, a more competitive game, and potentially a win. Despite that, still some good performances from the Zips. Yeah. Reagan Bass led the way with 15 points, 8 rebounds. Zakiya Rashid has really started to pop off recently. 4 for 11 from the field, 12 points. Kaya Woods, as we've mentioned, we love Kaya Woods here. Yeah, she's a fun player to watch. Just her, despite her being a small player, her speed more than makes up for that. Yeah. Just being able to get from one point to the next on the court is hard for the teams to catch up with. That change of pace she brings always catches teams off guard. Speaking of other players, Linnea Riley adds 10 off the bench. So like I said, despite the loss, some good performances. However, there were still things that could be cleaned up. As we see here, the Zips committed 14 turnovers.
Yeah.
That's a reoccurring issue for this team. Every game, it seems, they're between 15 and 20 turnovers. I feel like if their goal is to be, a competitive team, compete, especially in this MAC tournament, and beyond that, that's an issue that has to be cleaned up. Another thing I feel like that, can make the difference is I feel like we could be more aggressive around the glass.
Yeah.
I feel like we're never boxing out enough. We're never seeming to be where we need to be. I guess on that, on a similar note, Reagan Bass, her 8 rebounds led the team this game. She seems to far and away be the leading rebounder just about every game. So, seeing some other girls be able to step up, be a little more aggressive would help. And then just closing out on threes. And just shots in general would really help this team. Toledo's Quenisha Lockett had 21 this game, along with four other scorers in double digits. So like I said, those things, if those things can get cleaned up, I think we'd see a different result.
Yeah. And after this Toledo game, we had another home game against Miami of Ohio. This game was a little bit closer. This game we only lost by 10 points, but a loss is still a loss, no matter how many points it's by. This game, I kind of hoped because we were tied a couple times, I think we had the lead a couple times, and it's just kind of rough to see us not be able to win a game like this when it is actually this close. So what did you see in the team this game?
Yeah, looking at this game, it's something that was a little different from the Toledo game is that we seem to have gotten off to a little better start, only down four after the first, and then about 5 or 6 there going into half. So we made it a lot closer. Unfortunately, we let the game get away a little in the third. Tried to bring it back in the fourth, but it didn't quite work out. Just seemed to be some similar issues again. 14 turnovers again. Yeah. As I mentioned, case in point here of a reoccurring problem. Again, Reagan Bass had 12 rebounds. Next closest, Morgan. It looks like Lisa. Had four rebounds off the bench. So, just not enough. Work on the glass this game. Reagan had 13. Tanisha Clark, who is a player that we really need to mention here. Yeah. She had 10 this game. Kaya Woods again brings 10 off the bench. So some better performances, a little better team basketball, but again still not the game we wanted to see. Yeah,
I mean the biggest problem is if our highest scorer is only scoring 13 points to lead the team, you're not going to win with that. Our second 2 leading scorers were only at 10 points, so we just need for this team to have at least 2 or 3 people above 15 points in a game, because obviously that would lend itself a lot better to us winning. But with that, we are going to go into our second commercial break. But after that, we're going to be previewing all of our spring sports. So stay tuned.
You're watching ZTV.
Welcome back. So right now we are going to start our preview of all the spring sports. So Zach, let's start with this baseball team. The baseball team has a good mix of returners and freshmen or transfers this season. We already have 2 home runs on the season, which is pretty solid. And our pitching staff is doing absolutely amazing. They already have 21 strikeouts this season. And our record is 2-2, so not the best, not the worst. What are you thinking this team is going to do this season?
I mean, looking into the season so far, as you mentioned, a record of 2-2. Just been a collection of games on the road so far. They've gotten their feet wet in competition, trying to, I guess, figure out their identity. Players trying to figure out their roles on the team. One thing that kind of makes that a little hard is, a new head coach. Last year, they had an interim coach in there. So this year, more
full-time head coach here. So the team actually, is able to, I guess, rally sooner around, this coach. As I mentioned, the games that we were playing, start off with the game against Illinois. Took the game into 11 innings, came away with a 5-4 win. A good confidence builder for this team. In the next game, again against Illinois, ended in a 1-3 loss. Not exactly what we wanted to. The team then bounced back against Fordham, winning that game 14-3. So they've just, like I said, they've just been trying to figure the season out so far. There's definitely some positives that can be taken away from this.
Yeah, the last game they played was against Wake Forest, and they're first in the country, so that game is always going to be extremely difficult, especially since we have a new coach. But sadly we lost that game 14-3. But I think what we're just going to be seeing this entire season with this team is just kind of an up and down season, just because they're starting to learn their new coach, learn their positions, all that kind of stuff, especially the new players. Mm-hmm. So I think we should expect to see a pretty solid record this season. So let's change our thoughts a little bit to talk about the softball team. Currently, they have 11 strikeouts from the pitching staff. Once again, pretty solid. They have a record of 1-3, so not the nicest record. But they have a second-year head coach this season and a lot of returning players. So I think they just need to find their footing a little bit, and then they'll be a little bit better this season.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, as you mentioned there, this team is pretty similar to the baseball team in the sense that they have a good balance between the returning players and current players. Mm-hmm. One thing that definitely helps them out is being able to retain Craig Nicholson for another year. Yeah. That should help with a lot of continuity, a lot of familiarity with the system, their roles on the team. Some exciting players I'm thinking of, coming back this season. Haley Croyle is back on the mound. Yeah. She had an amazing freshman season. I expect her to, continue to progress from here. Behind the plate, Abigail Schiller's back. She had a great end of the season last year in her first season. The outfield's pretty similar. Tiffany Stevens is back. Megan Lee's back. Brooke Civic's back in the infield. So just a lot of familiarity on this team. This team, as we saw, is really scrappy. Really plays well together. And that's obvious in this Delaware game they had in their away tournament. Ended up 13-12 in overtime. Unfortunately, a loss, but it does still show their competitive drive, their will to win. Sure. That goes into Middle Tennessee State. Came away with a 2-1 win. So definitely cleaned some stuff up. Played a really well game. Played a real well game there. Then ended Florida Gulf Coast, who was hosting that tournament. 0-2 loss the first game, not really the way they wanted it to be, but still made it a pretty close game. Didn't let it get too far away. Second game was 1-4, so they gave up a few more runs, but found some success offensively. So I just expect this team to just continue to build on this, and I expect for a pretty exciting season.
Yeah, this team really stepped into their own at the end of last season, especially. They had an amazing record last season. They were just out of the MAC tournament. That was so sad. So I think really what their goal is going to be this year is to get into the MAC tournament because they were so close. Yeah. So I think they'll have a really good season again since they have so many returners and a lot of the new girls are really talented. So I'm really excited to see where this team goes this season. For the last sport of this episode, we are going to talk about lacrosse. They have a new coach this season, and their record's only 1-3. Mm-hmm. They started off the season going to sunny California. Who wouldn't love to be there? Sadly, we lost both of those games. We lost to Cal 10-19, and lost to UC Davis 7-20. Not what we want to see. So Zach, what do you have to say about these two home games?
Yeah, I mean, looking into the games after that point, as you mentioned, the California run, they bring it back to Indecision here. Welcomed in St. Bonaventure, who last year beat the Zips team, but the Zips team from last year to this year isn't really the same Zips team. They had a lot of injuries early on.
Yeah.
So far in the season, they've been able to avoid that injury bug. And they've been a pretty decent start, from what I would expect. In the St. Bonaventure game, came away with a 15-12 win.
Yeah.
It was a very well-rounded game from this team. Noelle Boyd, who was one of the players that got hurt last year, she had 4 goals. I believe Heather Carey had 4. Then there's players. Clink Scales is back this year. Hannah Sanders is back behind the goal. She saved like 11 shots in this game. So just a lot of similar faces. Like I said, they've cleared up the injuries, brought in some new faces. Seems that this team is starting to gel well with their head coach. I think it's definitely a breath of fresh air that this team needed to continue to move forward. Speaking of moving forward, after that game, they went to Ohio State, ended up 18-3, which I'm not too surprised on, because Ohio State is just they're loaded in every sport. They're super talented, and it's just a different level of competition up there. But with that in mind, this team only won a couple games last year. Already off to 1 win. So obviously 1 win would match it, but I expect a lot more from that.
Yeah.
If they can continue to stay healthy and continue to build on this, it should be a pretty good season.
Yeah. I think all 3 of these teams are just going to do pretty well this season. So with that, we are going to wrap up today's episode. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and X at ZTV Sports and on YouTube at ZTV Sports Report. As always, I'm Megan Williams.
And I'm Zach Leininger.
Thanks for watching, and go Zips.
This program was produced by ZTV at the University of Akron. Do you want to gain experience in video production, professional social media, or working with real clients? Visit the UA School of Communications online or follow us on social media to learn more. ZTV. Make media, make a difference.